Colorado Rocky Mountains, 1957, a woman named Hope Adler, on a lure, is standing in a payphone, speaking to an unheard voice on the other line. Hope claims that she found mysterious numbers written in the ice. All that is heard on the other end is static, which spooks Hope enough for her to hang up. Denver, 1982. It has been 3 years since Finney Blake, Mason Thames, killed the grabber, Ethan Hawke, and has garnered a reputation for being a tough guy. Gwen, Madeline McGraw, catches Finney beating up a new kid who allegedly challenged him, and he felt the need to prove a point. Finney masks his trauma by smoking weed, but is still haunted by visions of the grabber. His and Gwen's father, Terrence, Jeremy Davies, has been sober since the ordeal and no longer abuses them. Finney and Gwen have also become friends with Ernesto, or Ernie, Miguel Mora, the younger brother of Robin, who appears to have a crush on Gwen, and it seems to be mutual. At night, Gwen has a nightmare where she sees a boy named Felix, Simon Webster, arriving at a place called Camp Alpine Lake, seemingly nervous for starting his time there. Felix is chased through the woods by the grabber, who slashes the boy's body and dumps him in the lake. Felix scratches the letter W into the ice. Outside of the dorms, Finney hears the payphone outside ringing. He tries to ignore it, but it goes on a continuous ring until he finally answers it. He hears the grabber's voice on the other end, telling him that hell isn't flames, it's ice. Back in Gwen's dream, she sees the 3 dead boys, followed by the grabber trying to attack her. Cal touches Gwen's arm and burns her. Finney runs to the dorms after he hears Gwen screaming and goes to wake her up. She sleeps in the boys' dorm in Ernesto's bed, where he flirts with her and they nearly kiss until Finney ruins the moment. The trio meet with Mondo in the morning for breakfast. While he is not happy that Gwen stayed in the boys' dorm, he tells them that he knew Hope, who was a counselor there and was nicknamed Starlight. Finney hears the phone ringing again and answers it, but he hears what sounds like Felix's voice speaking to him the same way the grabber's other victims, as he and the other boys are lost and cannot move on. Finney, Gwen, and Ernesto meet with Kenneth and Barbara to ask more about what has happened at the camp, but Barbara looks down on Gwen for sleeping in the boys' dorms, as well as her potty word. Gwen later sleepwalks outside and goes to the kitchen. Finney answers the payphone again and is taunted by the grabber, who has been plotting his revenge on Finney and now wants him to suffer by taking away what he loves most. Ernesto rushes to get help from Kenneth, Barbara, and Mustang. The grabber's ghost attacks Gwen and tosses her around in front of everyone. Ernesto and Mustang pull Gwen away as the grabber tries to throw her in the oven until he decides to drop her. Everybody gathers in the chapel with Mondo to talk about Hope in Gwen's visions. She explains how she's been seeing the boys who died at the camp, and Mondo recognizes them from her descriptions. Mondo shows Finney and Gwen a picture of the last year the camp was open, with Hope among the counselors. Then, Finney recognizes one of the men as the grabber. Mondo says he was a maintenance guy named Bill, and they called him Wild Bill Hickok, hence WBH from the boys, because he wore a belt like a gunslinger. Gwen realizes the camp is where his murders began. She also knows that finding the boys' bodies in the lake and setting their spirits free will remove the grabber's powers. Mondo is in his office looking over pictures of Felix, Cal, and Spike. The grabber then contacts him through the radio and creates a blood and snow image of his mask on the window. He then finds Finney outside smoking a joint and has a heart-to-heart with him over his situation. Then he takes Finney's weed because it's not even good shit. As everyone starts to go to bed, Finney and Ernesto take turns keeping an eye on Gwen as she sleeps. This time, she sees the visions that her mother saw of Billy, the paperboy who was the first kid taken by the grabber in the area. Hope wakes up after realizing Wild Bill is a killer. Gwen watches as Hope goes to the grabber's home, where she finds Billy, but then is taken by the grabber in his van. It is then revealed that he killed Hope and staged her death as a suicide by leaving her hanging and having Terrence discover her. The grabber proceeds to attack Gwen, slicing her arm with an axe, which causes her to start bleeding in reality. The ghost kids help get Gwen out, but now she sees herself standing on the lake while Mondo is there and just found Felix's body. He starts trying to break through the ice, but the grabber is able to smash through the ice and drop Mondo in there. Finney tells Gwen to fight back when Grabber has her trapped inside a phone booth, so she does so and causes the booth to blow up and push Grabber back. Outside, the group rescues Mondo before it's too late. Terrence shows up at the camp in his snowplow after getting a phone call about the situation. However, Gwen refuses to go home until they have found Cal and Spike's bodies too. She calls Finney out for how he's been handling his trauma, to which Finney snaps at her and breaks down that nobody knows what he went through and how hard it is for him to live with that every day. Gwen convinces Terrence that her abilities are real after telling him how she saw him blaming himself when he found Hope's body. He agrees to stay and help. The group spends the entire next day looking for the other two boys, but they get nowhere by the time it is dark. Gwen starts to fall asleep, and the grabber starts attacking by striking Kenneth with his axe and then dragging him across the ice, causing him to slide into Barb and making her face plant on the ice and break her nose. Terrence dives in the water with help from Sleep Gwen, who is pushing the barrels with Cal and Spike's bodies in them to the surface. The grabber starts to get pissed and removes his mask, revealing his hideously decayed face underneath. The grabber eventually makes his way to Finney for his revenge, but Finney fights back as well. Once the boys have been found and freed, the grabber is stripped of his power. Finney smashes his face into the ice repeatedly despite him being invisible, and Gwen starts chopping him up. The ghost boys then drag the grabber into the water, sending him back to his icy hell. Gwen wakes up and kisses Ernesto. The next day, Mondo calls the boys' families to give them closure. Finney and Gwen start to leave, but she hears the payphone ringing again. She answers it and hears Hope's voice, speaking to her from heaven. Hope gives her daughter some reassuring words before hanging up, causing Gwen to cry. She tells Finney what she heard before the two return home with Terrence and Ernesto. 3 years after his ordeal with the grabber, Finney Blake has earned a reputation for being a tough guy for killing him, but he continues to live with the trauma. Meanwhile, Gwen has been seeing visions of 3 murdered boys, Felix, Cal, and Spike, at Camp Alpine Lake in the Rocky Mountains. Finney and Gwen's late mother, Hope, who also had visions, used to be a counselor there. The two are joined by Ernesto, younger brother of Robin, one of the grabber's victims from the last film, who has a crush on Gwen. The trio meet the camp's manager, Mondo, who knew Hope very well. The grabber attempts to attack Gwen while she sleeps as a means of revenge against Finney for killing him and sending him to hell. It is revealed that the grabber was a maintenance man at the camp named Bill, nicknamed Wild Bill. Hope eventually saw in a vision that he kidnapped the paperboy from their neighborhood, and the grabber killed her and staged her death as a suicide when she got close to exposing him. Gwen realizes that finding the boys' bodies and freeing their spirits will remove the grabber's powers. Mondo finds Felix's body under the icy lake but is nearly killed by the grabber for it. The whole group, including Mondo's niece and 2 other employees, looks for the other 2 boys while Gwen falls asleep again. The grabber starts attacking people in reality, but Cal and Spike's bodies are found, and Finney and Gwen start to beat down on the grabber before the 3 boys drag him back to hell. Gwen and Ernesto appear to get together. Before leaving the camp, Gwen hears a phone call from Hope, who is in heaven, and gives her daughter some reassuring words.